do you mind if I look in the trunk? My instinct is to say no. I don't want anybody looking in the trunk. Sometimes people feel, well, if I say no, they're going to think I have something to hide. Let me show them that I don't have anything to hide. If I have something to hide, it's crazy to open the trunk. People do, and it's amazing. They do open the trunk. Now, if the police are looking for this little baby that was just kidnapped by a stranger a few minutes ago, and he fled with the little baby in a car just like mine, and I don't have anything else in the trunk. I don't have anything bad. I don't have the baby. I don't have anything else in the trunk. I'll pop the trunk. I'll pop the trunk. I want them to find that baby, and I want them to find him in a hurry. But if I have anything in the trunk at all that I don't want anybody to see, even if it's hidden well, I'm not going to let anybody look in that trunk. And I don't have to. And the only time that car can be searched is if there's probable cause to believe that there's something in there. The cop is sure. But he doesn't have to wait. He doesn't have to go get a warrant because the car can be moved.
Hey, Joanne, what if someone pulls you over for a driving offense, pretextually, and you stop the car, turn off the engine, get out of the car, and close the door? And the car is not moving, and the engine's off, and ostensibly the police could go get a search warrant for the vehicle if they think they have probable cause. Possible?
Yeah.
It's possible. The law doesn't require the officer to go get a warrant. He doesn't have to get the warrant. If I'm taken into custody, if I'm arrested, and now they have the car, and they have to take the car, they have to impound it, they can't leave it there, they should see if somebody can come and pick it up, if I have somebody that can come and get it. If not, though, they may take that car to the impound lot. If they do that, they are required to search the car in a regulated way, in the same way for each and every car. They cannot be looking for evidence. Now they have to search the car in order to make sure that there aren't allegations later on that property was stolen. So they have to record what was in the car and whether there's a radio, whether there's a stereo, whether there's this or that or anything else. They may do that. So if I have stuff in the trunk that I shouldn't have in the trunk, that I don't want anybody to find in the trunk, they may. They may find it, and it can be used against me as evidence.
This is called we're going to hold questions till the end, Deborah, but this is called an inventory search, okay? And I was astounded as a young lawyer when I found all of these ways that the police can really get around what you would think to be an ironclad right. The inventory search, so that the police know that you had sneakers and a sweatshirt and whatever personal effects in the back, and that you can't make a claim that they were stolen. You know, they happen to also generally find the drugs. But let's say you're driving down the highway and someone thinks you've got a gun right in your car. That's the allegation, searching for a gun of some sort, or a baby. Take the baby example. A baby doesn't fit into, say, a matchbox, does it?
No.
So there has to be some limitation on the search based upon the object, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. If the officer has probable cause to believe that I'm carrying a sort of shotgun in my car and I'm not authorized to carry. Let's say it was just used in a robbery. If he stopped, when he stops me, he may search the car for that shotgun. But that shotgun, the size of the shotgun, limits the search. He can't look in the glove compartment for the shotgun. He can't look in the console for the shotgun. He can't look wherever a shotgun would not fit. He may look in the trunk of the car if he has probable cause to believe that I've got that shotgun in the car. But he can't look where the shotgun wouldn't fit. And it's the same thing if he's searching my house. If he's looking for an elephant, he can't look where an elephant wouldn't fit. He can't look in the medicine cabinet if he's looking for something that wouldn't fit in there. Can't look in the drawers if he's looking for something. But if he's looking for drugs, powder, leaves, he can look any place with probable cause, with a warrant.
LSD blotter paper is a particularly problematic example here. A small thing fits anywhere. These days in the Southern District of New York, when you get discovery and you see the warrant that's been issued by the judge, as my colleague David Holland knows, the thing that is always being sought after are these flash drives, right? And a flash drive will fit in pretty much anything. So search warrants these days are crafted in a funny way that tends to include things of all shapes and sizes. But remember, if the elephant doesn't fit in the matchbox and they're looking for the elephant, they can't look in the matchbox. So now we've talked about cars, we've talked about the street. Sometimes you have police knock on your door. Anyone ever have the police knock on your door? I know some people have. Did they want to come in and search?
Yeah, they said they were looking for somebody.
Looking for somebody. And did you let them in your home to search?
No, but they broke in the back door.
Did they? And what'd you do?
What did I do?
Yeah.
Freaked out.
You probably didn't call the police, right?
No, I was placed in handcuffs for about 2 hours and then let go after they called the chief and the judge or something. But I was sitting in the back of the patrol car.
That's very invasive. And if I can ask you, where did this occur?
This was upstate in Hudson Valley, in Saugerties.
Okay. Home, right? Search warrant for your home, unless, of course, you do what? Consent, right? Then, of course, they come on in, and they start looking through your drawers, and they start looking at your walls, and they look at your paintings, and they look at the books you read, and they look at the pieces of paper that are there, and the effects that are there, and the residue that's there. And then you get busted, right? Or you're like grandma, and you let somebody in because they're a community police officer, and they want to make sure you're doing okay, and they conduct a search because your granddaughter's living there, and they find her pot, and then they bust grandma. Don't consent to the search. Lorilei, in your practice, where I know you represent a number of people in the immigrant community, do you find issues pertaining to home searches and police activity?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, to preface this, a lot of the rights that we're talking about have no bearing on your immigration status, right?
Right.
So whether you're a citizen or a non-citizen, documented, not, you still have, theoretically, these constitutional rights. And the reason also, I'm thankful to be here today to provide the immigration perspective, because I think oftentimes that voice is missing from these conversations, especially in drug advocacy type of events and organizations. So it's great to have this conversation. But it's not only immigrants who may have convictions or violations that are at risk, but who've engaged in any type of activity that are at risk. And remember that citizens who might be suspected of being immigrants just because they're people of color are at risk. Everyone is at risk. And what we see is that, particularly if it's the Department of Homeland Security conducting the home arrest, they flat out lie about who they are. They worm their way in. A common thread that we hear, there's two different types of home invasion that's conducted by the DHS, Department of Homeland Security. One is at 3 a.m. and they basically knock your door down. The other one is when they try to slime their way in by saying, there've been some break-ins in the cars on your street. We just want to make sure that your car wasn't affected, that you weren't affected. Can we come in and talk to you and just check it out? And that's how they get their way into the home. And so it's very problematic. And I also wanted to add just one thing about any type of, especially if anyone here is a non-citizen or if you know non-citizens, make sure that you don't carry any identification that has your country of origin on it, because it's the government's burden of proof to show that you're someone who should be a target for enforcement and removal. And so when you carry that form of ID, let's say a consular ID or something, you're giving them identification, because it's true that if you're stopped on the street, you don't have to give them anything. A stop and frisk doesn't mean that they can grab your wallet and look at your ID, but they might anyways, right? So it's something to keep in mind that all of this may have different consequences, especially if you're a non-citizen.
And so what would your advice be to a client that has the police potentially coming to their door? What do you do when the police show up?
So what we educate our communities to do is to definitely do not consent to entry. If they have a valid warrant, they're going to come in anyways, right? With consent or without consent. So why make their job easy? And that also means don't even crack open the door, right? You want to see if they have a valid warrant, have them slip it under the door, have them slip it through the window. See exactly what it is that the warrant is asking for, because it does have to be specific in nature, right? They have to be looking for a specific person, a specific thing, a specific purpose. And, you know, for example, if they're looking for a specific person, we still don't recommend that you consent to anyone entering the premise to look for that person. If that person is not there, you tell them that person isn't there. They have the warrant, they might come in and search anyways. If the person is in the home, in that situation, you would want to ask law enforcement, obviously they might not comply, to take steps backwards at least a few feet from the home, and then you ask that individual person to leave the home, so that way you don't put everyone else in the home at risk.
I think this is kind of a good point. When we talk about warrants, there are two kinds of warrants, right? There's a search warrant that allows people to enter a dwelling or look at a car or whatever and find the object of the search. And then there's an arrest warrant, which allows law enforcement to come and take somebody. In the case of an arrest warrant, when the police knock on your door and someone in your home is going to be arrested, you have a crossroad, right? You could have the police execute the warrant, find the person in your home, and go room to room in your house, in your closets, conducting what they'll call a protective sweep, right? Because they need to make sure there's no one hiding in the closet with a gun. And in the course of walking into your closet to look for the person with the gun, God knows what they'll find there, right?
Yeah.
So here's your choice. Person who is the subject of the arrest warrant based upon probable cause goes to the door, walks outside quickly, and then you close the door. And without a search warrant, they then can't enter the dwelling and conduct any further searching. Now that might be somewhat helpful to you if you are tasked with that, but if that's where you're at, it's an unpleasant place to begin with. So you do not have to consent to having people enter your home. If there's someone who's the subject of an arrest warrant that's in the home, you have the option of having them leave the home, and then there's no more basis to conduct this protective sweep. And if indeed there's a search warrant that someone sticks under your door, it's a valid search warrant, don't be an obstructionist, right? You just want to let your home be searched and deal with it from there. Lorilei, are there things you tell your client base about how they should move with law enforcement?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, we all know that law enforcement can be sometimes a little jumpy depending on what your actions are, particularly if you're a person of color, right? So what we caution our clients is definitely you need to be as safe as possible in that interaction, even though you have rights that you should assert and rights that you should protect. Obviously, safety is number one. So whenever possible, if you can safely record an interaction with your phone, try to, if it seems like they're behaving inappropriately, which at least in my world in the immigration context is 100% of the time. I've never heard of like a good immigration contact. So I think, you know, the risk though is obviously you don't want to reach into your pocket all of a sudden and have them think that you might be reaching for a weapon, right? You never want to create that situation where you're putting those officers in a state of anxiety because it's already a stressful situation, right? So, and I think that's the most that you can do is try to be as calm as possible, calmly repeat, I don't want to speak to you, please leave my home, or if you're on the street, can I leave? And just keep on repeating that over and over and over again.
So we have some magic words that have come across tonight, right?
Yeah.
And let's go through some of these magic words so we feel empowered to say the magic words, right? Can we all say, you can repeat after me, I do not consent to a search.
I do not consent to a search.
That's good, that's excellent. Am I free to go?
Am I free to go?
I am not making any statements.
I am not making any statements.
I would like to see my lawyer.
I would like to see my lawyer.
All right, that's like the nuclear one, man. When you go nuclear with like, I'd like to see my lawyer, everything should stop. Of course, the trick is that you'll say it, and no one will really hear it, and then you'll just be asked a follow-up question. You'll continue answering the questions, and then you've basically waived your demand for counsel. But these are the rights that you have, and these are the things that you need to consider saying as soon as you fear any kind of a threat being uncovered in anything. And it doesn't have to be a crime. Let's say you're driving down the highway with your car and you have like a plastic blow-up doll in the trunk, right? You may weigh whether to unlatch the trunk or not, and you don't have to. In our lives, we have privacy. We have privacy interests. We have things about us that nobody should demand that we uncover. And we have the right to assert our privacy. Does anyone have any questions as of right now? Val,
Well, I have three, but I'll keep it simple.
give us one
is-
for now.
I'll give you the first one. So so I have young children starting high school, right? I mean, we talk about a lot of things, but I'd like to know, how are the rights different for underage people versus over 18? Like, if my son gets stopped for, he's getting on the subway, somebody wants to search his bag or something.
That's a great question.
What advice do I give to
Subway
underage?
bag search is also maybe a little bit different, right? Anyone want to field the subway bag search and what you tell a minor about the police?
Yeah, I don't take the subway very often, but we're talking about protective searches, terrorists.
Yeah, so they have,
Yeah.
they
They
set
put
up these
tables
desks
out.
at the, yep, and you walk downstairs and they just pull people that are walking into the turnstiles and
I
say,
just
let me
tell
look
them.
in your bag, right? And then they just give you like they open it up and they look inside
Yeah.
and,
Well, it's my understanding that if I don't want to undergo that search, I leave and I go to another train station. That's the response. It's similar to the airport searches.
Mhm.
That's the justification for them, because of terrorism.
Got it.
I didn't know they were still doing that.
You can't really
Yeah.
object to it though, right?
14th
These are
No,
Street.
random
no,
searches.
my
every day.
objection, I just have to go get another train.
and
go to
then
another
and then
train
the other
station.
part about, look, I know my kids are probably gonna be looking at experimenting with things, right, and all that, so, when we talk about probable cause, does the police officer have to tell you what the probable, like I smell something or your eyes look red, does he have to say what this probable cause
Yeah.
is?
Well, your eyes look funny, or I smell something. The smell, who knows? That a court might consider that probable cause.
Mhm.
A strong smell of marijuana. But the subway, then it's my belief. They're not looking for that. They're
No.
looking for terrorism. They're
Arms.
looking for guns. And if I did smell of it, I would leave quickly.
I got one little practice tip that you have just triggered in me. The TSA, some of us look at these videos and we say, the TSA is not looking for cannabis, right? They just refer to the locals. And I'm flying back from Colorado, so what's the big deal? Do you remember in the beginning of the night I said you can't make yourselves vulnerable anymore? That you
Yeah.
have voices that need to be heard? That people rely upon you to speak about this whole movement here, right?
Right.
You don't need to compromise yourself by flying on an airplane with pot. It's ridiculous. Whether you think the TSA is looking or not. You shouldn't, and this is speaking to the minor thing. By the way, Val and I have known each other since our sons were in kindergarten together. And so we have, anyone in the room have teenagers? Have had teenagers?
Yeah.
You know how important this discussion is, right? Because we would rather that they not get arrested. You'd rather that they're gonna misbehave, they do something safe, somewhere safe, not in some place where you're getting the phone call, right? That's the worst thing that can happen to a parent. So don't bring marijuana to school in your school bag.
Right.
Don't smell like pot, right? Try not to walk around with red eyes in public smelling like pot as a young person for a number of reasons, right? And I think that's like the best advice. Much of this, and I think in a minute or two, we're gonna I have 3 statements from people who are in this room that they have taken the time and energy to write about contacts that they had with law enforcement. And I'm now going to read 1 or 2 of them.